Hi, I'm Sinead. I'm standing for Cornwall Council for Falmouth, Boslowick. I'm welcoming you very warmly to our second Meet Us Monday. And I'd like to introduce the other three candidates who are all standing county council in Falmouth. So many of you may already know Jayne. Jayne, do you want to say hello?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jayne Kirkham. I am the Cornwall Councillor for Falmouth Smithick, and I've been the Cornwall Councillor there for just 3 years now.
Okay, now over to you, Laurie.
Hello, I'm Laurie Magowan. I'm standing for the Arwenack seat in Falmouth. I also work at the University of Exeter as a project manager there at the moment. Kirstie?
Hello, I'm Kirstie Edwards and I'm standing for Trescobeas and Budock for Cornwall Council. I run a small business called Oceanic and do a lot of community work and run some various different pieces to do with the environment in the local community.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. So this week we're going to be talking about low wages in Cornwall and job opportunities. So I was just going to kick off with a bit about my experience. I had been employed primarily by large charities, but I set up my own business about 5 years ago from a pop-up shop. I was hugely lucky to get a pop-up shop in the middle of Foy, where I was living then. And it, to me, seems an incredible opportunity when there are empty commercial properties in high streets to utilise them for pop-up shops. Since then, we've gone on to have a permanent high street presence. We now have our permanent shop and we employ 3 local staff. There are huge challenges involved with being self-employed, but Cornwall is got one of the highest self-employed rates in the country, around 25,000 businesses. But people who are self-employed do tend to have lower wages than people who are employed. So while it is great to see entrepreneurship in Cornwall, it's an area that really needs to be tackled. I think we were very keen when we started that we're obviously going to pay our staff fairly. We pay our staff at least the real living wage. They're all over that now. And that's been hugely important for us because not only do we feel happier as employers, our staff are happy. Well, they seem pretty happy and they're loyal. They've been with us for many years. As employers, I think it's hugely important in terms of staff retention to pay your staff. And I think as a candidate for Falmouth Boslowick, where there are many small businesses, I would hope all employers are paying their staff the real living wage, because really, unless you incorporate that into your business plan and your cash forecast, it's a kind of an integral part going forward, how well you pay your staff. So I know us four have all got very different experiences in employment and working. And having grown up in Cornwall, I think my first job I got paid £2.50 an hour or something like that. So when the Labour government brought in the minimum wage in 1997, to me that was a huge transformation. Kirstie, I'm just going to hand over to you now. Tell us a little bit about your experience of working and living in Cornwall.
I've had a kind of a real mixed bag, because I had my son. Well, I found out I was pregnant with my son at the beginning of my final year of university, so I was 2021. So I came out of university, graduated with a baby. So my life plan changed slightly, as you'd expect it to, and I continued then doing what I had been doing previously through university, which was waitressing and chefing and so on and so forth, working in that sector. Obviously in Cornwall, that's kind of what you do when you're a young person in Cornwall, isn't it? You try and get yourself a job in one of the many cafes, restaurants, bars, whatever. And so I continued doing that because it was flexible around the children, because I could be there during the day and I worked evenings mainly. So I did that for many years. Then I went on and did my teacher training. I ended up working first at Cornwall College, lecturing A-levels, media mainly is what I lectured, and then up to the university working for Falmouth University, working communication and cultural theory for many years up there too. And then I got very poorly. I'd been poorly since a teenager, but my health then stopped play for a number of reasons I won't go into now, but I had to leave work and went on to benefits, basically onto health sort of benefits for a while, because I was too sick to work, basically, bottom line, lost everything, and it was really challenging. And then gradually clawed my way back to try and work out how on earth I make a living and find out where my place is moving forward. And it was at that point that the
How long ago was that?
Sorry, what was that?
How long ago was that? Did you start?
So I lost my job. I had to leave my job maybe 9-10 years ago now. And then I was unwell for a long time, so probably 3 or 4 years bedbound pretty much, and not really able to do much. And then during that period I started writing, and that's how I started getting published in magazines and stuff about healthcare and being invisible disabled, and, you know, feeling forgotten and all those sort of things. And then it became very obvious when I started looking at going back into work and trying to get employed again, that it was really challenging, being a single parent with children, firstly, because your children are ill. It's really difficult, you know, you've got to fit around school hours. And then with my health, you know, I can't be traipsing around the county and being stuck to a set time frame. So the natural progression for me was to go self-employed and be able to dictate my own hours and to do things around my health, which is how I got involved in a lot of community work, because I was able to sort of do it around my health and the other things, and how I got involved with the business too. So my small business is Plastic Oceanic, and we take non-recyclable plastics and use them to make jewelry and other things, and that's something I can do part-time around the children and everything else. But like you said, you know, financially it is an absolute nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare, because overheads here are so high for business premises and all the many things you have to have as a small business, that I work very, very hard. And I think we worked out, me and our accountant last week, I get paid something like £1.10 an hour for the amount of hours I do a year, which is next level really, isn't it? And then ironically, you know, I do still do some paid public speaking and some guest lecturing, and then I'll get paid £75 for an hour of my time. So it's like the two opposite ends of the spectrum, but I can't do that full time because my health wouldn't allow it. So it's tricky. And then I've got children, like teenagers, older children, and they're all in the sector pretty much of waitressing, all those kind of things. It's like history repeating itself a little bit, you know, and it's challenging for them. At least they're not getting paid £2 an hour like I was the waitress when I was 16. But it's not easy for young people, and it's not easy for parents, I think. And I know, Laurie, you've got experience of trying to get people back into work with health problems, so maybe it's a good time for you to come in.
Yeah, certainly. It's my role at the University of Exeter. I manage a project called the Inclusivity Project. It's one of a number of European regional development funded projects that the University of Exeter works in partnership with a great range of local organisations. Our project works specifically with Age UK, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, Disability Cornwall, and the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Local Enterprise Partnership, who you know, their focus is all about driving the economy, getting people into work, addressing the skill shortages that you talked about, Sinead. An inclusivity project was set up pre-COVID, where within Cornwall, actually unemployment rates were really quite low. You know, lots of people in work, albeit not particularly well-paid work potentially, and maybe fixed-term contracts or 0 hours. But actually, the claimant rate, as I understand it, was quite low within Cornwall. So the project I work on was looking to support SMEs, and again, I understand that, you know, around 97% of businesses within Cornwall are small and medium enterprises. Sorry, drop the jargon. And then obviously the public sector are the larger organisations that employ lots of people through obviously the NHS, the local authority, the universities, really quite big employers and growing as well. So the project was set up, they can recruit and retain more diverse workforce. I'm particularly thinking about the ageing population of Cornwall, looking at bringing more older people into work, people with disabilities, recognising there's an underrepresentation of people with disabilities, both visible, invisible, mental, physical disabilities into the workplace, and supporting the business either make adaptations so that it can be a more inclusive place to work. I think through COVID and other things we've seen, certainly in terms of remote working, you know, technological advances, businesses are now, well, need to and more willing to adapt the working environment. And that could be, you know, the hours that people work, where they work from, you know, the proliferation of Zoom and team meetings and all the rest of it. So that businesses, I think, are more willing to be more flexible in terms of the working environment. And also recognition that I think 1 in 3 people in Cornwall have got some form of long-term health condition, and the economy and businesses need to adapt and respond to that. So that's a project I work on, really interesting and exciting, and get to work with a lot of fantastic small businesses and the innovation and technological advances they've got to really push some of this forward. So yeah, really interesting place to work, but just reflecting also that, you know, when I moved to Cornwall 16 years ago, I moved down to a very low paid job, working for a great company, supporting young people in outdoor activities and alternative education. But I think in terms of either growing up in Cornwall or relocating to Cornwall, as a lot of people do, there's a lot of challenges that people have to face. Jayne, what are your thoughts and reflections on all of this?
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm quite similar to you in that way. I moved down here 15 years ago and I was 8 months pregnant at the time. I moved down with my new husband, who was a naval pilot. Unfortunately, we lasted a very short period of time, and he ended up, he doesn't live in Cornwall anymore, but I do randomly, even though he was the reason that I was down here initially. And I used to be a trade union lawyer in London before I came down here. So I was earning quite a lot of money, really. And when I came down here and then very quickly became a single mum with no job, it was a bit of a shock to the system. So I did what you all did. I worked in a cafe, I worked as a teaching assistant, and I did, you're talking about your scheme, Laurie, I did some higher level teaching assistant qualifications using, firstly, it was just when the last Labour government was in, so it was funded by them, and then when the funding for that was all kicked out in 2010 when the coalition got in, it was European funded. So I did some courses and I worked at Falmouth School for nearly 7 years being a teaching assistant, because as Kirstie said, you need to be around for your kids if it's just you, and it was a job that fitted in, and it, you know, it was a great job. It was working with the kids in Falmouth, which was fabulous, until the politics thing happened and it all changed again. So I've had sort of an interest, a very different career. It's changed and I've done lots and lots of different things. Talking about something that you mentioned, I think it was you, Sinead, about the rates and rents on the high street. Falmouth High Street, really, really expensive for rents because everything's very privately owned by big investment companies, and I don't think they've caught up with the fact that the rents need to drop now, because for them it's just an asset on a balance sheet. So we really struggle because our high street, some of the places, you know, the councils own the shopping centres and they can do more with it. So some of the things that the Labour Party have talked about empty properties and how maybe they could be, the local authority could step in, could be really relevant here. And of course, business rates as well, which of course, well, the problem at the moment, that they'll be coming back again, and business rates are something we'll have to deal with. And to talk a bit about the foundation living wage rate, the council, again, as a result of something that the Labour group were really involved in about 3 or 4 years ago, we are a foundation living wage employer, so that's £9.50 minimum if you're employed by the council. There are some weird anomalies, and working in an academy school, we were one of them, that we weren't part of the council, so they didn't have to pay foundation living wage, and lots of teaching assistants and people who work in schools still don't get it, which is weird and wrong. But it does apply to the group of companies, so the Corsa, Cormac, all the companies that the council kind of own potentially, really. And we've taken on the Unison Ethical Care Charter again. That was a Labour and a union thing, so that all care workers in Cornwall who work through the council or with people who the council funds, they get the foundation living wage as well, and they have better terms, conditions and training and that kind of thing. And that's something that we want to push out. So it's all very well some public sector employers doing that, but we need more people like you, Sinead. We need more employers who will do that as well. So the whole thing spreads out across Cornwall and the average age goes up, average wage goes up.
What's the sorry, can I ask the question there in terms of how can the council influence either private sector organisations or ones that obviously they don't directly control to raise that living wage? I mean, what?
There are lots of things. Yeah, lots of things we could do. One of the things that we're trying to do now is my hobby horse, which is the way the council buys goods and supplies and services. So we have a budget at the council of 700 million quid per year, which we spend on things that the council needs. Now, part of the motion that I put to council is that we spend on those services and those goods, and we don't just look at the price and we don't just look at the quality, we look at what is given back to Cornwall. And one of the conditions there could be and should be that any suppliers that you take on also pay the foundation living wage and put some money back into Cornwall and fund, say, training or apprenticeships, or give some of their staff time to work in the voluntary sector. So there are lots of ways that you can influence. If you're a big spender in the local economy, how that money is spent and the type of organisations you spend that money on. So you could look at community interest companies and cooperatives and local businesses, SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises in Cornwall, and make sure that money is kind of ploughed back into the local economy. So there are ways you can influence it.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, I think that's a good round. We're probably coming to the end now, are we?
Yeah,
Kirstie?
we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. I think we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some great schemes around the county. I mean, I'm particularly like Code First Girls, maybe because I've got 2 daughters, I don't know, but teaching girls how to code is something that Falmouth University set up, because obviously the tech industry is going to be big, is growing in this county, in this duchy, sorry. And there are also other areas such as transport. When I worked at 15 Cornwall, one of our key problems was getting the apprentices down to Watergate Bay. I mean, but via public transport, it's just impossible. And my sister, who runs a bakery in Foy, literally can't get any bakers to come in that early on public transport. So everyone has to live locally or have their own car. So there are other challenges we are going to face. But I think Jayne's point about reinvesting back into Cornish firms is hugely important, and I think a lot of people, my personal friends, are really, really happy when they saw that, Jayne, because a lot of them have got small businesses and they were really excited to see something so positive happen for people who run businesses in Cornwall.
It's a change of mindset. It just needs, and it needs strong leadership as well. It needs the political leadership to keep pushing that on.
Yeah. Do we want to say what we'll be talking about next week? Have we, as a trailer?
I think next week is our environment week. In terms of social media week is environment. We have a different theme each week. So this week was pay and the economy. I think next week is the environment. So I suspect it will be how we're going to care for our green spaces, ideas surrounding that. So I think that'll be our next logical progression to match up with our online presence.
And energy, maybe.
And energy, yeah, absolutely.
Like energy potential we have down here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you everyone very much for tuning in. I do come back next week. Are we 1 o'clock? Kirstie?
We're filming it about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and then it will go out later that Monday.
Lovely. Okay, well, we'll see you next week. So everyone say a quick goodbye.
Bye, everyone.